Okay, let's dive right into this explainer, because today we are looking at a molecule that presents one of the most fascinating paradoxes I've ever seen in modern neuroscience. Most psychedelics take you on a journey, right? They give you this profound, rich experience to marvel at. But the molecule we're unpacking today, 5-MeO-DMT, does something entirely different. Widely referred to as the God molecule, it doesn't give you a hallucinatory landscape to explore. Instead, it temporarily deletes the traveler altogether. So today, we're going to explore the neuroscience of the void. We'll look closely at how this substance literally switches the ego off, the massive clinical momentum building behind it, and of course, the very real dangers that come with it.
It's absolutely fascinating how this contrasts with classic psychedelics like LSD or psilocybin. Think about it. If you take a traditional psychedelic, your sense of self might dissolve, sure, but there's usually still a witness left over to watch the light show. Well, 5-MeO-DMT completely erases the you experiencing it. Within a single breath, the self that normally narrates your life is simply gone. There's no story, no swirling, colorful geometry, just a complete whiteout and the total dissolution of the boundary between you and everything else.
Because we're looking at some incredibly complex neurobiology and some genuinely severe risks today, here is our roadmap. 1. Meet the God molecule. 2. A completely different doorway. 3. Neuroscience of the void. 4. Real clinical momentum. And 5. Dangers and the bottom line. Let's get into it.
Part 1. Meet the God molecule, origins and the timeline of the void.
So what actually is 5-MeO-DMT? Technically speaking, it's a highly potent tryptamine, a chemical cousin to the classic DMT you might find in ayahuasca, but it has the single extra methoxy group attached to its structure, and that tiny chemical change alters absolutely everything about how it acts in the human body. It's wild to think that it is most famously found in the defensive venom of the Sonoran Desert toad, and when it's vaporized, the pharmacology is just staggering. You get an onset within about 30 seconds, the peak hits hard between 1 to 5 minutes, and you return entirely to baseline within roughly 30 minutes. Compare that to an 8 or 12-hour LSD experience. This makes 5-MeO-DMT one of the shortest classic psychedelic experiences in existence, yet by almost every account, it's the most intense.
What really caught my attention, though, is this staggering number, 75%. In one study of 20 people given vaporized toad secretion, 75% of those participants experienced a complete mystical experience. That level of intensity is statistically indistinguishable from a high dose of psilocybin, but it happens in a fraction of the time. We are talking about a near-guaranteed, rapid-fire collapse into a state of pure being, which researchers actually call oceanic boundlessness.
Moving on to part 2, a completely different doorway, the receptors. To understand why this substance doesn't produce colorful, immersive visions, and why it instead produces a total whiteout, we really have to look at the unique biological doorway it uses to enter the brain. It's a fundamentally different mechanism from its psychedelic cousins. Classic psychedelics all share one signature target in the brain, the 5-HT2A receptor. That's the receptor that drives their rich visual character. Now, 5-MeO-DMT hits that receptor too, but its defining feature is its heavy engagement with a completely different serotonin receptor, the 5-HT2A receptor. That highly unusual receptor profile is the chemical fingerprint of this molecule. In fact, its preference for that 5-HT1A receptor isn't just a little bit higher, it's a massive 300-fold higher than 4,5-HT2A. This is literally the mirror image of a substance like psilocin, which strongly prefers 2A. Neuroscientists actually believe this enormous 300-fold preference is exactly what shapes 5-MeO-DMT's unitive, boundary-dissolving nature. So it's less about painting a hallucinatory landscape for you to look at, and much more about just shutting down the projector entirely. Which brings us to part 3, neuroscience of the void, turning off the me. So what actually happens inside the human brain when the self just switches off? Well, it all comes down to the default mode network, or DMN. Think of the DMN as the biological anchor of your ego. It's this highly integrated hub spanning specific regions of your cortex, and its entire job is to stitch together your personal narrative, your ongoing sense of me, keeping you tied to your everyday identity. When you daydream about your future or ruminate on a past mistake, that is your DMN hard at work. What 5-MeO-DMT does is trigger a rapid, large-scale cortical reorganization. It quickly breaks down the integration of this default mode network, and the brain instantly shifts into a less hierarchical, much more globally connected state. And as that normal network integration falls apart, the felt boundary between the self and the universe dissolves right along with it. It's a much faster and a much more complete collapse than we see with psilocybin, completely erasing the observer. All right, part 4, real clinical momentum, from ceremony to FDA trials. Why does this matter to psychiatry? For decades, this molecule lived strictly in ceremony and anecdote. But that rapid ego dissolution we just talked about is now showing massive potential for treating some of the most stubborn mental health conditions out there, like severe depression. Clinical trials for synthetic 5-MeO-DMT are advancing incredibly fast right now. In early 2025, GH Research reported that their inhaled synthetic version, called GH001, met the primary endpoint in a Phase 2b trial for treatment-resistant depression, showing high remission rates within just a week of treatment. Meanwhile, Beckley Psytech and Atai's intranasal candidate, BPL-003, earned an FDA Breakthrough Therapy designation in late 2025. So this molecule has officially left the fringe and entered serious clinical development, though it's worth noting late-stage Phase 3 confirmation is still pending. And the therapeutic benefits aren't just random chemical side effects. A really fascinating 2019 naturalistic study by Uthog and colleagues revealed that the psychological improvements, the lasting reductions in depression, anxiety, and stress, correlate directly with the degree of ego dissolution experienced by the user. Let that sink in. The more completely the ego dissolved during the 15-minute experience, the better the patient felt afterward. The void itself literally seems to be the medicine. Finally, part 5. Dangers and the bottom line. It's time for a reality check. As incredible as the science is, I need to be completely clear. 5-MeO-DMT is not a gentle substance. The physical and psychological demands it places on the human body are uncompromising, and the risks involved are deadly serious. First, there's the extreme potency. Active doses are measured in tiny milligrams, meaning even a small error can lead to a terrifying, physically dangerous overdose. Second, and this is absolutely crucial, combining 5-MeO-DMT with MAOIs, like the vines used in ayahuasca, or with everyday SSRI antidepressants, can trigger fatal serotonin syndrome. Documented deaths have occurred from exactly these combinations. Beyond the severe medical risks and cardiovascular strain, there's a serious conservation crisis. Milking wild Sonoran Desert toads for their venom severely stresses and harms the animals, seriously threatening their populations in the wild. Add to all of this that it remains a Schedule I controlled substance in the United States. So, what should we take away from all this? The clinical momentum we just discussed relies entirely on synthetic molecules used in highly controlled, heavily supervised research settings. Synthetic 5-MeO-DMT is totally identical to the active molecule. It avoids harming the toads, and it keeps the dosing exact. This is absolutely never a substance for casual, recreational, or unguided use. The serious science taking place right now is deeply unglamorously careful about how it approaches this drug. I want to leave you with a provocative thought as we wrap up this explainer. 5-MeO-DMT presents one of the most fascinating paradoxes in science. It is the shortest experience on the clock, yet arguably the most profound in the mind. As we move forward, how can science safely navigate a molecule that offers such incredible psychiatric healing, but only by demanding the temporary deletion of the very self we are trying to heal? We are just beginning to map the void, constantly balancing incredible therapeutic promise against uncompromising danger. Thanks for discovering this with me today. Keep asking questions, and I'll see you in the next explainer.